Up, guys? Told you we'll be back. Just kicking it out tonight. This cool winter night's coming in and getting a little bit of colder even as we speak. But tonight I got Dustin finally on here. We've been trying to get him on here for a little while now.
Yes. Yeah, we've had some malfunctions, but I'm on now.
We'll give it a few minutes and see if we can get some folks to join in with us. But right now we should be on YouTube and also Facebook Live. And as you guys come across any kind of questions that you might have about wintertime, extreme cold water fishing, let us know. Dustin guides up there, Grand Lake, Oklahoma. Isn't that right, Dustin?
Yes, sir.
I guide down here in Mississippi and fished some really cold temperatures in the past. Maybe not like your northern guys, but really cold for us southern guys anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, you said 50 degrees out there?
Not tonight. It's supposed to get down to 15 in a couple days.
Woo, yeah, so it's getting cold there too then.
Yeah, it's going to get pretty cold.
Got you.
There you go. There's Larry. Got a few people coming on in.
Oh, Larry's on there?
Yeah.
Has he been fishing lately?
You know Larry has. There's Michael Sylvester, Mr. Battery Guide. We're going to come across a couple of different subjects tonight and talk to Dustin today. And, you know, I want to talk about boat care, one, in this extreme weather that we're having across the United States, really. But what do you guys need to do to prepare for that? And, you know, just keeping your equipment ready to go at all times in this harsh weather can be challenging, I guess you would say.
What exactly do you do with yours since you're using it on a regular?
Well, you know, mine, I never winterize it, I guess you would say.
Yeah.
I always, right now, I've got my motor trimmed down all the way to drain all the water out of the lower unit. I've got my plugs all busted open for they can drain out.
Gotcha.
And that's about it for me.
Yeah. Winterize ain't in our vocabulary, is it?
No. It's definitely not. It definitely got some folks joining in. I appreciate everybody's time tonight. And like I said, this is going to be a weekly thing for you guys. And it's definitely brought to you by Bobby Garland Baits. And we couldn't do it without those guys. And this is something that, you know, we have a real passion about as far as helping out the crappie community and, you know, informing you guys what we see on the water and, you know, tell you about today's bite. And that's the logo and that's the whole theme for this live portions that we're doing right now. Getting some good comments going. Dustin, what are you doing this week? Tell us about what's going on over there in Oklahoma on today's bite.
I am actually tying some stuff up for a trip tomorrow. I've got a trip a couple, and we're going to go to Grand. I just scouted it yesterday for the first time in a while. This winter has been it's actually been nice weather. I take a lot of time off during the winter everything slows down a little bit. This cold weather can detour some people. So it's kind of time to start getting back in the groove. So I'm getting everything, trying to knock the rust off. I take a lot of time off to do some hunting. So we're finally back at it. And yesterday I went and checked some spots that's been good in the history of winter fishing, and it's on. Grand Lake's looking really good. Some of my favorite time to fish right now is at Grand because they start to school up in big congregations in open water. So you don't have to fight the docks or chase single fish. You can just follow these big schools around and continually catch them. So I'm looking forward to it. But this weather we got coming up is going to really put a damper on things. But just for a short time, it looks like next week starts to warm back up. And from now till late February, March, it's going to be some tables full of fish, hopefully. Before we try.
You know, we'll talk about this extreme cold or really cold water fishing for crappie. And yeah, I've seen some really unique things in the past when it comes to these cold water fish that I've never seen before until it gets extremely cold for our parts.
That's right.
You know, I remember a couple of years ago, I was guiding over to Lake Washington and the lake completely froze over, which is extremely unusual for us. So we had to make a little real quick decision on where we could go fishing. So we made a couple calls and actually went down to Eagle Lake.
You have clients?
Do what?
You have clients with you when you were
We
going?
had clients. We went in the total blind.
Man.
And we get down there, and there were 8 boats on the boat ramp loading up, leaving. And it was about 11 o'clock that morning. And I was like, man, I said, we can go out there and try them, but, it's not looking too good at the moment. But, went out there and went to some brush piles that I knew about. And all of them had a lot of fish on them, but they were completely lockjaw.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And
I know certain lakes will do that. It'll get so cold that I think they do what everything else does, just pretty much lock up.
the thing that I found that day that really opened my eyes to crappie was I noticed and this was live scope. I mean, I was using live scope, zoomed out, and I noticed a giant school suspended out in the open.
Yeah.
So I went a little closer and come find out it was a giant school of crappie pretty much sitting on top of each other, back to back on top of each other. And they really weren't even moving. I guess they were just almost like in a trance in my mind. And we had to put the baits directly on top of them and just let it sit there. And, we ended the day with 18 keepers. And compared to 8 different boats that left that day, I felt like I won the Super Bowl. But
little do you know those boats were leaving with limits, though.
No. I asked them.
I'm just teasing.
No, I definitely walked over there and asked them because, it's one of those things on harsh conditions, and you see different people at the boat ramp.
Yeah.
Man, I'll go over there and ask somebody a minute, hey, man, how was your bite?
Yeah.
And it's always been one of my favorite things to do, just to socialize with people. But it definitely opened my eyes on not giving up. And it definitely, you can still catch them. It's just a matter of how much you want to actually pursue them and look for them. But what are you seeing some other those fish? What are you actually targeting? Open water schools, I guess?
Yeah, so open water fish, you can still go to certain docks right now and catch a lot of fish at Grand, but I don't know what the water clarity, the lakes you fish are, but Grand starts to clear up big time in the winter like this. I'm going to go with a few foot visibility, but it might be even crazier. So they push really deep. I'm deep compared to you, I guess, in the probably 25 to 40 foot range. And those schools will sit down there, just following bait fish around, or like you said, just kind of sitting there. But that clear water, it seems like they see a bait a lot further away. So you have a lot more room for error. If you don't, you can hit, sometimes those fish will come 10 plus feet to come hit a jig. So when you don't have to land identically on their head or put it perfect. If you swing a jig somewhat close, out of that 100 fish that's sitting there, there's going to be a few aggressive ones that'll pick up and come get it usually. But super, super cold water will make a difference. But I've noticed that's more in muddy lakes, muddy, shallow water lakes. Around here, I do run some special trips on trophy fish, and they kind of will shut down when it gets super cold like that. You can see those 2 or 3 pound fish sitting there, and you can hold a jig all day long. They'll just scoot over, get out the way of it, or dive to the bottom. They want nothing to do with eating a jig or messing with the minnow or anything you try to do. So it just depends on where you're at, I guess.
I just got a question from Jerry over in Texas. He said, should I look deep drop-offs, main river channel? He's fishing Lake Ray Roberts.
Is Ray Roberts kind of like Fork?
I'm assuming so. I've never been there. I would love to definitely go in that area and hook up with some of them guys and try them out.
Yeah.
I'll go back to some of my experience fishing, these cold water times of the year, and I definitely still look for the river channel anywhere I go if they have them.
Yeah, for sure.
And I look for suspended fish. It seems like to me that the suspended fish in the cold water are going to bite a lot better than the fish on structure. That's just what I've seen.
Yeah, if there's standing timber, and it's kind of like Lake Fork, because I know Jerry Hancock and them are beating them up pretty good right now. I think I seen him today was just fishing standing timber, and he said the black crappie were up on top, which they're usually sitting on top of the standing, and the big white crappie are sitting under those schools, a lot more aggressive, and they'll eat a little bit better. And I think he was around the 35 to 40 foot range off of the channel on a flat standing timber, but a deep flat is what he said, I believe, if I read it right. But I try to keep up with all those guys. And so I would definitely start at the channel and maybe off the side of the channel somewhere if there was standing timber, because I think Roberts has it, but I'm not positive.
Jerry Hancock just actually answered on the string right there. Timber on Ray Roberts, flats off channels. You heard it from the man right there.
Yes, sir. Hey, I pay attention. You see that?
Yeah, I'm sure
He's
Jerry.
probably like, how the heck does that guy know what I said today?
That's right. Larry, he has asked a question about would it be great for long lining? You know, long lining, I love to do it as long as the water usually doesn't dip below 40 degrees. 40 and above, I've caught fish year round doing it, but it actually gets a little bit difficult, and the fish are just, they won't chase down the bait as much for me when it drops below 40 degrees. Let's see what we got here. Appreciate all you guys definitely joining in. We got 78 people. That's real good.
Hey, you're gonna have to do the comments. I'm not seeing anything on here, but I see your face. That's all that matters.
That's right. What are you doing, Dustin?
I'm tying on for tomorrow. I'm just
Hey, join in and show us.
You bet.
Don't be just hiding it now.
Yeah, I ain't hiding nothing. I'm just switching to heavier stuff because these fish are starting to set deeper. So I'm putting on bigger weights, bigger jig heads.
Spill it.
Yeah, I will. Hang on just a second here.
Spill it.
Yeah, I know it's a big question all the time. People ask about pegging your weights. That's like a big question. I just I like a bullet weight because it seems like when the line wants to try to tangle, that line doesn't get caught on top of the bullet. A little bit better just seems to slide off. Barrel weight, they all work, but I just like a bullet a little bit better. But I peg both sides. A lot of people peg one. They all work a little bit. Like I said, depends on what style you fish. But I peg both. Just seems like I get tangled a lot less. And I'm throwing on a jig head. I'll probably put on a slab hunter. It's got the T-tail on it. I'll show you guys it here in just a second. But when you're swimming it across these big school of fish that I'm chasing out here, it seems like that action of the tail just makes them go nuts. You can throw other jigs. I've noticed just a night and day difference between a shad-like jig coming across with a swimmer on it. So I like the slab hunters, something like a live minnow or monkey milk, something. We have to go pretty natural here because we got really clear water. So
going back through some of these comments, let's see Derek Top Hat Jigs. He's on here with us.
Oh yeah,
got a bunch of guys. Thomas says sometimes you have to pop the jig. Let's see, what else?
To untangle it. Or what's he saying?
Sometimes you have to pop the. Well, people comments keep on coming, got me, but let's see.
He may have saying
pop it real hard, let it fall back in the school.
Oh yeah, that'll kind of trigger them. Yeah.
Another question about the res, which that's where I got at. And
the res.
We're with our spider rig right now this time of year, and it would definitely just be along the main river channel. You can't hardly beat up by Highway 43. It's fish gravitate up there without a lot of current. I'm gonna fish both sides of the bridge. If we have a lot of current, I'm actually gonna go on the lake side of the bridge to get out of the current. So it kind of depends on current on what size the bridge I'm going to fish or bridge area. I really don't fish the bridge. There's Carlos there.
Speaking of current, Fort Gibson, seems like a lot of people are wrecking them on the river of Fort Gibson, but it's all to do with the current as well. I think if there's a lot of current, you might as well hang it up. But if things should start slowing down, unless we get a lot of snow, that'll be a really good place to hit. Lay down off the bluff.
There's Derek. He said something about the. Let's see. Find you again, Derek. He's saying upsize when it comes to this time of year, and actually, I would agree with Derek on that. For me, last week when I was fishing, I was fishing, 16 to 22 foot deep, catch them anywhere between, and I upsized my baits and actually started catching a little bit better fish doing that. So I do not disagree with that by no means, but actually, it just goes back to me is keep trying different things and not giving up.
Yeah.
And
yes, just depends on the day too. It does seem like the better fish will step out though of those big schools to bite a bigger bait, you can kind of weave out a few. When you're spider rigging, do you see multiple fish, or are you just chasing singles?
No, I mean, usually an area that has a lot of fish, you'll see multiple on the screen. And my general thing is just getting in because you're not going to be able to scan around and see them all at once, because there should be so many fish in the area.
Right.
But I just really look at the column that they're feeding in. So if I see fish 16 to 22 feet and I'm finding that they're actually biting mainly at that upper water column, I'm going to target most of my baits at that upper water column.
Got you.
When breaking down the res, how many sections do you break it into? Ooh, that's a good question. I'm going to answer you too, Chris. I see that question too. But, the res, in the wintertime, I would break it down to two main bodies. It would be pier fishing, and then it would be river channel fishing. And what I mean by pier fishing would be, the main harbor, sports and marina, anything like that has some deep water piers is always good in the wintertime. Probably about a month ago, went out and we looked around some piers, and they were absolutely loaded right now. So piers would be a good target area, and then also goes back to the whole river channel. And, depends on the current on what side I would actually fish.
Do the piers hold the same caliber fish that's setting out there in the open water?
Yes and no. I think that just because you can target those bigger fish when they're suspended and identify them better, but when you get into those giant schools of crappie, for me, it gets a little bit more tricky to identify one big fish when there's a school of 100 sitting there.
Yep.
Chris Lovelace, he's wanting to know about Eagle Lake. Where would you start? Chris, I would start right at the boat ramp. I would start out that deep water out in the boat ramp and scan around the break line there from 14 to about 18 foot of water. I'd put in at the boat ramp, and I wouldn't even crank up my big motor. I would drop it down right there and just start scanning around for fish. You know what you're doing. And then if that didn't work, I would probably move up on by Crow's Pier and scan those deep water edge of those piers in there and look for suspended fish. But years past for Eagle Lake, it's probably one of the best wintertime crappie lakes in Mississippi, in my opinion, what I've seen. It's just always been phenomenal. One of my favorite tournaments I ever fished was at Eagle Lake in December, and some of these guys probably online tonight will testify to it. And, I think at the end of that tournament, and back then we could keep 50 per boat, so we had 88 crappie in a boat at the end of the tournament, and had 28 over 2 pounds. Those kind of fishing days you don't remember. I mean, you'll never forget, rather.
Yeah.
John Lee says even the point across from Crows. John Lee knows a little bit about the res as well.
What's the limit on the res?
It is 30 per person, and it's no size limit on the res.
Oh, man.
So you can keep a lot of fish pretty quick. Ooh, that's a...
Dang right.
I'm going back and trying to read some questions, so kind of bear with me for a moment.
How many rods out front are you?
If I'm spot rigging, I'm going to push 8.
So you'll even spider rig when you're 20, 30 foot deep?
Yeah. I mean, I recall the deepest I recall catching actually crappie spider rigging was about 45 foot deep.
Ooh-wee.
Yeah, and you caught him, it was pretty much over. Tim says he's ready for summertime.
Oh, now. Might be a little warmer.
Yeah. Thomas says, have you ever noticed on live scope when fishing schools that almost always 2 fish come out one time to hit your jig? It's just never usually one, he says. Have you noticed anything like that, Dustin?
That's paying attention to a lot of small detail, but I'd say some. I mean, I've seen both, but it does seem like more often it does seem like a pair will come out kind of fighting over it. If you get a pair to come out instead of a single, usually one of them's going to hit, though, because they don't want the other to get it, vice versa. And in my opinion, I feel like they're starting to compete for it. So that's what you want when you see a school, if they're coming out multiple at a time.
Yeah, no doubt. You know, last year, December, we'll go back to this Eagle Lake thing, and we found these giant schools of crappie suspended. And we don't see that very often here. I haven't in the past. And maybe now because we're using live scope more and more, but
Right.
We cast it to them. You know, we would stay back off of them, these big schools of crappie, and would use 2 jigs on a line and sit back and use a 6-foot pole and cast to them.
That's another thing I was going to talk on. These Huckabee rods got a little stiffer backbone, and this is the time of year I'm really thankful for that, because the deeper you get with heavier jigs, a stiffer rod makes a big difference dropping that deep. If you're using a real light action rod and throwing a 1/4 ounce plus a, you know what I'm saying, a lot of weight, that Epic 8 has a lot of backbone. A heavier weighted rod just seems to do a lot better with deeper water. But
you were talking about that a moment ago as far as your setup with the bullet weight. What size bullet weight is that?
man, you're gonna laugh at me, but I'm not positive.
Come on.
I know. I want to say, man, I don't know. Yeah, what a rookie, huh? I've unwrapped everything and forgot which one I grabbed.
I know I've been using 1/2 ounce mainly.
Dang, yeah, you spider rigged monster.
No. That's live scoping single fish.
Oh, really?
Yeah, 1/2 ounce peg weight, 16 to 18 inches above them. If I was spider rigging, actually, I'd probably go to an ounce weight. So
holy smokes! So you're dropping a 1/2 ounce down there?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a lot of weight, ain't it?
No, not really.
You still have I mean, you still feel everything good though, because you're not super deep too.
No, I've been using fluorocarbon for a little while now. After getting a boat with old Hayden Jeffries, he kind of showed me how he likes his fluorocarbon. I've been using fluorocarbon, but you know, my experience with fluorocarbon when it gets really cold is not very well. So I would probably not use fluorocarbon right now in this extremely cold weather, but
that's right.
I've been using this fluorocarbon and really like it.
That fluorocarbon works really good.
I'm trying to read Jerry Hancock's comment here.
I like that braid too, though. I guess it's just different occasions. What pounds you use? 12, I believe.
15.
15.
I would like to use tungsten weight. Somebody just asked me if I used it. I would like to. It's just very expensive. I'm very cheap.
I was about to say that gets a little expensive when you're losing.
Yeah, I know some guys that do it, and maybe it's a game changer. I'm not sure. I can't say, but I like the thoughts of using tungsten weight. Maybe I need to get some made. I don't know. Jerry says if you can see a pair stacked on a single tree, usually be good fish. The top fish will run out and never bite, but the bottom fish will bite 99% of the time.
See, I think it gets pretty clear out there too, don't it?
Jerry, you can answer that one.
I think it gets somewhat. I mean, the clarity, if they're going that deep, surely it gets pretty clear.
So that Wayne asked me if I have a spider with live scope. He says it's a game changer. You actually tell the person which pole is going to get hit before it gets struck. No, you're exactly right. Whenever I got live scope, which I guess it would be 4 years ago now, we spider rigged, well, the whole spring and everything else with it. And it definitely is a game changer with any tactic out there. A lot of guys are still guiding it and using spider rigs to go out, and it just goes back to me is the sport of crappie fishing. You can still just about do anything you want to with live scope. If you like to spider rig, there's nothing wrong with saying that you can't go out there and spider rig and still catch a bunch of crappie doing it. It just helps you out. I mean, knowing how deep those fish are, where they're at.
Big difference, don't it?
Oh, yeah.
Did you do any long lining this year much, or did you stay?
No, I still have people that's been fishing with me for a while, for years now, and they come down to just two long line troll, and
Really?
absolutely.
That's crazy.
You say that, but it's really not. I mean, it's just a good relaxing way to crappie fish.
Let me ask you this: have they tried the live scope though?
Oh yeah, yeah. I took a couple guys this spring, and we casted 2 stumps during the spawn, and we annihilated them. And when they came back this fall, that was the first thing they said. That he's like, "We want to relax this time. We caught a lot of fish with live scope, but we want to sit back and crappie fish and like
Yeah.
we used to do with you." And I was like, "Hey man, that's cool with me." And we pulled jigs those 2 days, caught fish. We didn't probably catch as many as back in the spring casting to stumps, but
Well, you can get. I mean, yeah, you can get stressful. It can get stressful and feel like some work when you're getting crazy on that screen.
Tim still uses spider rigs every day, he says. I believe Tim. I know we talked about it a lot. Tim's a guide up at Enid and Sardis and Grenada. He's been guiding up there for a long time now, and
He said he still spider rigs.
he's still spider rigging every day.
I'll be dang.
There's a lot of people that still like it.
It still exists.
Absolutely. Jerry says Lake Fork is staying to clear at this time of year, but the Roman fish will come up 3 to 5 feet at times.
Ooh, that's crazy. Those Roman fish, when they come up shallow like that, they bite. Jerry, if it's that clear, or is it hard to get your boat that close?
I'm sure he'll give him a second.
I know in the spring they beat them up that shallow, but I didn't know if they.
Derek says there's a lot of crappie boats on the market this year. What boat do you prefer? Well, it depends if I have a budget or not.
Yeah.
If I was going to go out without a budget, it would have to be a Ranger. They're just, I've got 2 Rangers right now.
Would you take a new Ranger?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. I would. They, my boat, I call it a tank.
My bank.
My bank.
You got to think about bank when you think about a new Ranger.
Maybe my wife's listening. She'll put it on my Christmas list.
Yes. I couldn't use a fiberglass guiding wise. I would beat it up way too bad.
Tim says the North Carolina schools seem like they like red clay banks. It's pretty interesting. Brad Edgar asked me about live scoping with using live scope while long lining. What's my strategy? The only way I use live scope whenever I long line would just honestly just to see how deep the fish are suspended. I know you could probably put the pole, on the side of the boat and look back behind you, but really I don't see a big advantage using live scope when it comes to long line trolling. I would just use it more or less just to see what depth of water that the fish are suspended in. That's the only way I would actually use live scope. But I mean, it would cut down your times, looking for fish and seeing where they're suspended out. So I mean, I would still utilize it, and I still do. Most of the time, I'm on water enough that I've got a pretty good idea where they're sitting at.
Here it is, guys.
Reggie wants to know what kind of boat you're running on Grand.
Yeah, I got the 2072 Grizzly Tracker, just a big old wide boat, kind of like a bus. I take up to 4 or 5 people at a time and got plenty of room, but it's not made for the big water, I promise you that. But it's perfect for what I do.
Okay, Jerry says they'll travel 3 to 5 feet up to bite, not the depth.
Oh, gotcha. I was like, what?
16 to 35.
Yeah. Heck, I remember going to a tournament there like around November, so not far from now, and they were catching them 35, 40 foot deep. Crazy. I thought it was crazy till I got into Grand in the wintertime. That Lake Fork got some big ones in it too.
Some kind of spam going on there.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Somebody telling you they love you? So I just chopped the top half off of that slab hunter right there, and it just gives a...
Hold it up more.
Yeah, I'm all turned around because it's camera.
Yeah.
But that's a live minnow right there. That's one of my favorites. I throw a pink head on it, and if you swim this bad boy by a crappie and he don't eat it, there's something wrong with him. That's it right there.
It's money, honey.
Money. I can smell the crappie on it already.
Yeah.
I'm telling you. Ain't gonna have much sun tomorrow. It's gonna be all cloudy, so may have to switch to a darker bait, but we'll see.
And Brian Young on there. He's on here tonight.
What's up, Brian? He actually asked me a couple of days ago about these fish schooling up. They're starting to school up, Brian, but they're not getting deep like I've told you they usually do. This cold snap will push them a lot deeper. Colder it gets, the deeper they'll get. And then they'll probably make right around the 40 to 50, 60 foot range. And then they'll start moving back up around March. Probably they'll start picking back up. We were catching them off the bottom in 55 to 65 foot deep last year in February. So I bet you they'll start pushing deeper. But right now they're like 25, 30 foot deep. Nothing crazy. They'll start pushing down, though, here, especially after this big cold front we got coming.
You know, last year we went to the show up there in Grove.
Mid
Connection we did. And I remember one of the biologists were telling me that he just got from the lake and they were seeing schools of 10,000 fish together out there.
Let me tell you everybody's got an opinion, right?
Yeah.
I haven't talked to him or anything, of course, but depending on who's on there reading the live scope, and Grand, if this is Grand he was talking about, I believe it was.
Yeah, it was.
Grand has gizzard shad the size of crappie. I mean, they have literally 1.5 plus gizzard shad.
Yeah.
And I've seen schools of gizzard shad that you would at first glimpse see the live scope and think, oh my word, that is a mile long patch of crappie, but they're gizzard shad. So it just depends. I've fished that whole lake. I mean, they ain't a piece of water I probably haven't been on. And I've never seen a school of 10,000. I mean, that big. You know, they were saying it was just a mile long, miles long, and bigger fish. Man, that's tough. That's hard. And it was towards the dam. So that's one place, I don't go actually at the dam. So maybe they're that full. But I feel like if there's that many crappie in schools like that, you'd think that there'd be 500 boats on that every day, trying to beat them things up. Because they ain't. I mean, it's just hard for me to, unless I've seen it, I guess. They might have mistaken it as shad is what I'm thinking. But I have seen schools, though, in the thousands of big fish. But I remember him saying that they were like miles long and stuff. I've never seen that before on Grand. So don't get your hopes up if you come out here, because a lot of people I talk to think Grand is just a super tough fishery and just have a lot of mixed emotions about it. If you know how to fish, it's a little different than most lakes I've fished, but it can be amazing. If you're looking for eating fish 10 to 12 inches, there's not a better lake certain times of the year, in my opinion. But I've never seen miles long crappie, schools of crappie, where I'd have 15 boats guided trip full every day, twice a day on them suckers.
Yeah, I see. Reggie just gave us a good question right here. And that it's a very tricky one, too. And I agree. He says, how hard is it to identify crappie 40 to 50 foot down? And
yeah, man.
I agree with that. I do.
I think that it's actually, I guess it's just something, if you do it enough, you'll start to figure it out, just like shallow water crappie. You'll start to catch on, and it almost as easy as me to pick one off on as deep 40 to 65 foot deep than it is 10 foot deep once you start to see what you're looking at and figure out kind of just how to read the scope. Now, it is a lot. You don't see near, and when they're that deep, the water's a lot clearer. So like I always say you have a lot more room for error. I can miss him by 5, 8, 10 foot. When you're fishing for a fish in 10 foot of water, you got to put that thing right on his nose because you're in muddy water usually. But deeper water, those fish I don't know what it is or why. I don't know if the shad kill is dropping shad or what they're doing down there, but they are so aggressive that if your bait gets anywhere somewhat close, you'll see them working up. You're like, there's no way he sees it, but he's coming for your bait. You start reeling it, he running all the way. So, I mean, it's not like I'm just dropping dimes on them down there, 56 foot deep, 50, 60 foot deep. But you start to figure it out. Usually they're not running by themselves. There'll be pairs to like 4 or 5 fish, but your bigger fish are always this time of year setting deeper. There'll be a school of 10-inch fish, 20 foot deep, and then under them you'll see these bigger blobs. And they're still doing the same thing they do shallow. They're kind of not moving. They're not. You don't see a bunch of action or anything. They're just sitting down there waiting for something to come by. And yeah, like I said, best way to tell if they're crappie is just drop a bait down there a few times, and because it will get frustrating trying to land a bait on them that deep, especially with an offset of your trolling motor.
Oh yeah,
that's a whole nother topic there. But
Jerry Hancock just said that to me. He says that the big fish look longer and not as football shaped. I agree a whole 100% with that too.
Absolutely.
So when it gets like past 20 foot.
Yeah, for sure.
And I would think it goes back to me too, is what are those fish doing in that water column? I mean, is it a group of them? Are they moving? Are they, and just by the swimming action, I mean, everybody that uses live scope will know that, the more you use it, you can tell how the fish is swimming on what they are. Now, gizzard shad, that pound and a half, that's the first thing I thought of whenever you said it probably, or could be possibly gizzard shad. And we have them just as big down here as well.
Yeah.
And
I could be, like I said, hey, maybe they know, but I just recently took out a biologist for Grand, one that works. I forgot his name, but he actually, it's the craziest thing ever. We caught the biggest fish I've ever seen come out of the lake when he was with me. But the way he was talking to stuff, like live scope's something they need to learn. They don't, it's something that nobody really studies. And you and I both know, if you ain't on that bad boy every day, I mean, learning what shad look like compared to crappie, because my number one on training people on live scope is they're chasing these schools of shad around all day saying, oh, they ain't biting. They just don't want to bite, but those are just shad. You're not even chasing crappie half the time. It's not super affiliated with the live scope. So that's where I feel like he could have just maybe looked and said, my gosh, those are all crappie. But maybe he threw a net and caught. That's why I kind of would like to ask him those questions. Like, how did you know those were crappie? Did you net them? Did you shock them? I mean, what'd you do to know? Because it's hard on live scope to trust that, maybe somebody that's not on it as much saw that many crappie or not. Anymore, it's a contest, if you will, of how many people see and how many fish people catch anymore. It's kind of turned into that, so it's just hard anymore to believe.
Brian Young, he's going to get you tonight. I like Brian. Good coming on here, Brian.
He's been hitting me up about them deep fish, so I bet he's really.
Yeah. He said, "Are you using forward view or are you utilizing the down view on your live scope whenever you're fishing for them that deep?"
I have never ever used down view on my live scope. Never have used it. I've seen people on Grand. Another great guide on Grand uses down view a lot. I've never used down view, and I think the deeper they get, down view would be even harder, because sometimes if they're moving, like chasing school of shad around and they're moving, I like to follow them just like you would a roaming fish shallow. Like I said, it's kind of the same exact concept, but you're just fishing a lot deeper. You're casting it out, kind of anticipating your bait to fall on them, and you're casting way off of where you should be, because in your mind it says I'm supposed to throw it right there, but you need to be about 5, 8, 10 foot to the right to land on. It's that stuff's the weird stuff. But forward view all the way. Some people might do down view, but I don't know a lot that fish that deep very much. It's not something, I mean, tournament wise, we never really get to fish that deep because it's off season. So I don't know. That was a good question though. I've never used down view. Have you, Brad?
No, I have not. Luckily, very rarely we have to fish for them that deep.
Yeah. Well, just like table rock, I bet our wayfish, Ken and I, we caught, I'd say 80% of our fish were deeper than 35 foot. I mean, yeah, I'm going to say 35 or so, and our big wayfish were 35 to 45 foot. I mean, we caught a 2-pound black crappie or a 180 something black crappie, 40 foot or something like that. And it was blown up, and her bladder had blown up into her mouth. I mean, I don't know if you ever seen that or not, but I mean, she had a balloon in her mouth, and I was panicking because it was around 1:00 noon, and we had this a monster for that lake crappie. And I'm like, it's what keeps us going to the next day. I think this was for our to make it to the final day. And I'm like, man, we got to go, because I thought the fish was going to die. And I ended up clipping the bladder, and she ended up living, I mean, as long as, if not longer than the other fish in the live well. So that was a crazy experience for me. I've I always just throw them in the live well, clean them later, never pay attention if you can keep them alive or not. Because at Grand, a lot of you guys have seen my video of blowing in the fish.
Yeah.
And throwing it back and it taking off. I have to reshare that sometime. But when we get them up there and they're blown up, like at Grand right now, if you're catching them 30 foot or deeper, most fish are just done. When you reel them in, they'll fight for the first few seconds, and then the issue is pretty much they float all the way to the top. Bald eagle or crane will come by and smack them, but if you don't blow in them or try to release them, some fizz them, they're dead.
Mm-hmm.
They're just float there. They give it up, which is crazy.
Carlos wants to know, do you do a lot of casting or long poling over there in Grand?
Good mixture of both. Just depends on the way I'm fishing for them. If they start roaming shallow, I'm long poling them. And then when I'm on schools, like during the spawn, when they're in 10, 12 foot, but there's big lines, I mean, a few hundred of them, I'm just giving everybody 7 foot dingo and dropping down the side of the boat, straight down, reeling them in. In a dock, we never really dock shoot, but I'll get close enough to the dock, just drop a shorter rod, 7 or 8 footer down. But when we're chasing them out in the wide open water, I like to grab the 13 to 16 footer and let them eat.
Daniel wants to know, what size jig head are you using then when you're fishing that deep?
I usually will go the weight usually goes in my peg sinker on top. And then I'll just throw a normal size. I'll usually throw a 16th or an 8 ounce jig. But then I'll throw, if it just depending on how frustrated I get of it falling down there, I'll throw a big weight. Because it can feel like forever getting a jig 40 foot deep. I just went with this gear I had now. That's why I'm retying, and tried to cast with some of these fish 30 foot or so. And if they're moving at all, I'm talking the slightest movement, by the time you think you made a perfect cast, you're 5 foot off because he had been moving a little bit. It just will frustrate you. So you want to launch it down there, especially if they're aggressive. If they're not aggressive, you got to downsize all that. You don't want to drop down there super fast, but most of the time those deeper fish will eat a little bit better.
Tony Skeen wants to know your opinion on telling the left or right of the fish using live scope. Oh, I've got one I can touch on this too.
Left, right, or like the front of the fish or the back of the fish?
Whenever you're looking at it on the screen, how do you tell if it's on the left side or on the right side?
Okay, yeah. I will turn I'll find the fish and get it super bright. I'll cast at my fish. And then if I can't see my bait immediately, what I'll do is if my fish is sitting there bright, I'll turn and see my jig. If I turn to left to see my jig and I turn back right and the fish is there, that means in my mind, my bait's to the left. Is that what he's talking about?
Yeah.
So that's the way I'll do that. If my fish is super bright, I get my fish as good as I can get it. If I'm not seeing my bait, I'll find my bait. But wherever I went to find my bait, I'll remember, okay, I'm to the left. I need to go right, vice versa. If I look right and see my bait.
Actually, I think I saw a video this week by Matthew Rogers, and he described it probably the best I've heard in a while. He says that he's feathering his foot pedal back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
And that makes total sense, actually. And that's what I do as well. I feather that trolling motor back and forth, and then I can say, well, I know my bait's really hot whenever I turn it to the left, and if I turn it back right, it's going off. So, I mean, it's really hard to explain that scenario, but I think that term feathering really hits it.
Yeah. So and another thing too is I always try to keep it on the fish more than I do my bait.
Mm-hmm.
So if you keep your fish bright the whole time while you're trying to get your bait in front of them, by the time you see your bait, you know you're going to be in the right spot. But if you can get lost trying to follow your bait, and then you'll look like, where'd the fish go? You'll be trying to find that, play that game too. So I try to stay on the fish as much as possible. And like you said, kind of feather it, and you'll see, okay, yeah, I'm 5, 6 foot to the left. I need to recast or move my long pole over. And then when I move my long pole over, though, I'm not going to watch my bait go over there. I'm going to go back to the fish and wait for my bait to come into that.
Carlos asking, how much do I use side image to find brush piles on the res? Well, I guess, right now I'm probably sitting about, I know at least 2,500 waypoints on side imaging.
Golly, man.
From that lake. And, that's a whole nother really great subject that I'm going to talk about one night is, side scanning and actually waypoint management, which that's a big thing for me. And I'll touch on it real quick. whenever I'm marking a brush pile on my unit, I'm gonna have it identified by the size of action and what it is. And what I mean by that, like if you're ever in my boat and you see a gold waypoint, you know to me that's one of the
Money.
best. That's
Yeah.
money.
Uh-huh.
A blue waypoint on my boat is a deep water structure, a deep water brush. A green bush on my waypoints is a stump, which might not make any sense, but it's a stump.
It
So
makes sense to you.
right, and that's what it goes down to as far as like waypoints. And like I said, we can go in depth in one night here soon on that as well. But waypoints and identifying different types of structure by colors and symbols. My unit looks like a kind of like a Skittles bag if you look at it in the distance,
Yeah.
because there's so many different colors and shapes, but they all have different meanings to me, and it helps me identify a different portion of the lake extremely quick. So if I know I'm catching them on my blue waypoints, for example,
Yeah.
I know automatically that's a deep water structure, and I can swing back out and say, all right, I've got 6 of these a mile and a half from me or whatever that I can go to and fish pretty much the same type of structure in different parts of the lake really quick. But that's on waypoints. But that's one of my favorite subjects, actually.
But
Pet peeves.
do you use that side scan though anymore after
Yeah.
you still like, I mean, with clients and
Speed of
stuff?
water. Well, not
Scout.
with clients. I mean, on rough days, I'll go out when there's 4.5, 5 foot rollers on the lake just to side scan new places on the lake
Yeah.
and find new structure that I wouldn't be fishing, but I can still side scan.
Mm-hmm.
And, yeah, you could throw down your live scope, but when it gets that rough, it would be really hard to
You're right.
find that. Go back. Oh, yeah. I want to say again, I appreciate everybody coming on here tonight, watching this. And, this thing that we want to do every week, Tuesday, 7 o'clock is our goal. We might have to modify it here and there, but I think that uh,
I'm
it's,
glad that I've stayed on this long and ain't nothing happened yet. Knock on wood.
yeah, don't be jinxing us now.
Yeah, I know.
Another thing that, Hunter just texted me just then. Tomorrow night we have the podcast releasing on YouTube with Kevin Rogers. Everybody knows Kevin Rogers. That's been crappie fishing anytime, and we go through there and Todd and I and Kevin and talk about how much tournaments have changed and the younger generation coming around and fishing tournaments now. And but definitely look out for the. It's really entertaining. Kevin. He can definitely talk with the best of them.
He fished the Wally Marshall, didn't he?
Yeah, that's where we were. That's where we filmed this one at. Was up there at the expo, and we've got some really, really good ones coming down the line as well. Still from that the Crappie Expo that we're going to be sending out. Johnny Coleman from Mississippi. There you go. Come on.
Was there crappie in Mississippi?
We're about out.
Oh, yeah. You never did talk about that lake limit changing on Darbone. What was the numbers on that bad boy? We were talking about it earlier, but I forgot.
Oh yeah, Darbone. They just switched to. It's still 50 a person on Darbone, but my understanding.
It is?
Yeah.
A day?
A day.
Oh, okay. I got you. I thought they switched that.
No, they changed it. You only can keep 7, and somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, please. But you only can keep 7 over 12 inches.
Got you. Okay.
So they're looking to
let them bigger ones go.
Let the bigger ones go.
Got
And, that way you can still have a 7-fish tournament as well. I think it's kind of the mindset of that as well.
Yeah. I got you.
John Mayo, bet your goals are some old rabbit holes. I would not doubt that at all. I know exactly what he's meaning. Those are definitely probably rabbit holes. A couple of them anyway. Hey, John, appreciate you guys watching. Yep, Patrick Matthews, 7 fish over 12 inches, still a 50-man limit, which is a lot of crappie. Good God.
Man, that is a lot, ain't it? You can do it with Starbone, though. The right days, you can.
Yeah.
That's a crazy amount. We have that here in Kansas, but certain lakes, it's not as crazy because they're just overpopulated and you catch a lot of small ones. But Darbone's not like that. I mean, you catch a lot of healthy fish in Darbone.
Newell from North Carolina, he's fished with me in the past. We went on Lake Washington. I would say, man, it had to be 6, 7 years ago, and I know we caught some giants pulling jigs. So we definitely.
It's about big fish season, ain't it?
Definitely is. Carlos asked me, does the crop ever get in that shallow vegetation on the res? You know, in my experience, and you know, different people, I'm not a shallow water fisherman day in and day out. I'll go shallow during the spawn, and that's pretty much, you know, for me, shallow water was 4 to 7 foot. I like water, honestly. 10 to 12 is my favorite, probably, if I was going to pick a water column. But they'll occasionally get in that shallow vegetation whenever they're mid-April, hardcore spawning. They'll get in the lily pads and they'll get them, willows or anything else they can spawn on, rocks. But it definitely not my normal place to crappie fish. I don't like fishing shallow. I'm getting some more. Does he Rodman res? What does that mean? I'm not sure about that question.
Yes.
Maybe. What's the most important thing learned when fishing tournaments and learning new lakes? You want to start that one?
Oh man, there's so much to learn at that. I would have to sit down and think on that one. I guess my number one would be. Did you say? Can you read that question again?
What's the most important? All right, it just got popped up. What's the most important thing learned when fishing tournaments and learning new lakes? Great question, by the way.
Yes, it is. I guess I would say keeping your mind open is the most important thing to me. Like I always get this boxed in thought of what crappie do, but when you travel across the U.S. and you go to a whole new lake, it's like a whole new species of fish sometimes. Grenada, for instance, for me, has been an absolute
I love
grind because it's such a different lake for me. Like I said, I'm fishing, 10 to 45, 50 foot deep. But when you're getting into 3-4 foot deep of water and it's chocolate milk and these fish they just act so much different. They're always on the move. You're always chasing them. But I would say open in your mind because I still at Grenada want to go out there to the 15, 20 foot water and compete with these guys when it is super hard because you're talking tournament fishing. So you're going to get some of the best. It would be just having a swivel of a mindset to be able to adapt real quick to something that you wouldn't expect, I guess. Look at places you wouldn't normally look and have like a system to where, okay, I'm going to check because you only have a certain, when we go, I don't have a lot of time when I'm guiding to go, 2 weeks or a week before all these tournaments. So I got like 2 days to break down this big old lake I've never been to. And I'll have like a thing in my head, like I'm going to check shallow, off the channel shallow. And then I'm going to check every different depth of water until I try to find something the best way I can put it to. But man, a wide open mind when you get there. Don't even be afraid to go to the boat ramp and go 100 yards from the boat ramp. Been there, done that, and caught top 10 fish, top 5 fish in big tournaments. I mean, it's just like, don't ever have an idea what you're going to think you're going to do until you get there and just grind it, I guess.
You know, on that same question for me would be, you know, paying attention to details.
Oh yeah.
Details. If you ever talk to most of these guys that win tournaments consistently, have won a lot through the years, they're always going to have one little detail that they have stuck in their mind that has helped them win that tournament. Paying attention to details and thinking about, well, all right, I'm catching them in a creek that's 600 yards from the river channel that's on the north side of the lake. And I'm catching them on the deep water side of the channel. Just getting all those details and actually lining them up and making a game plan to research it further. And going back to fishing some tournaments years ago, I see the guys that spent a lot of time on the water pre-fishing and not beating up spots, but what they were doing was definitely keep looking for those different patterns throughout the lake and making a really good game plan, but paying attention to details and looking for more than one spot to fish a tournament. I think in the past I've seen guys go out and, you know, they find a good spot and they'll fish it for 3 or 4 days pre-fishing it, and by the end of the day, by the end of their pre-fishing time, they've got 2 coolers full of crappie in the back of the truck, ready to go home, and they'll come to the scales with a, you know, very little bag, and well, it's hard to weigh them in when they're in a cooler.
Yeah.
But I would keep scouting and not pounding an area once you come across it.
No doubt. I think when you find the area that you're talking about, like the area you're looking for, you find tournament size fish too, because the lake's going to have certain areas that are going to have good eating fish, and then those big fish do something completely different. So there's calibers to what these older fish are going to do a lot different than your good quality eating fish. So you're looking for tournament size fish, but when you find that pattern, they're going to be doing something different. Zoom that map out and look at that lake and try to find other areas that do the same thing. And usually 9 times out of 10, not all the time, 9 times out of 10 though, if it's a channel swing or a flat off a channel, you can look at the same depth flat off the channels a mile down the lake. That's how you find your other spots. They'll kind of be doing the same thing.
Yeah, Carlos said stay shallow at Grenada, but Tommy Scarlett showed us years ago on a national championship that he could catch them out deep when everybody else could, and he put a whooping on the national championship fishing deep on Grenada. So I wouldn't always fish totally shallow on Grenada.
And we're getting to that now though, because I thought the same thing. I mean, gosh dang, it's been one shallow so many times now since the scopes came out that it is something else. I went out there in that deep water this year on this latest tournament. I think it was the national, it was Crappie Masters, their classic or whatever you would call it, the big shebang at the end of the year. And I was so hard-headed, stuck on the fall pattern being deeper, and there's no way that they're going to catch them shallow. I even went and looked in this shallow water. I'm telling you, there's levels to catching these fish shallow. And, you know, Hayden Jeffries, he's one that won it, I'm pretty sure. And he's won all of them, so I'm sure that's one he won too. He was catching them shallow, and I knew for a fact, just from dock talk and everything, that most of the big fish were getting caught shallow, but I was so stubborn and stayed out there deeper, and that's where it usually is won in the fall. And my gosh, there was a night and day difference from the fish they were pulling shallow compared to what we were pulling out deep. I mean, I think we still finished really well, but just that top 5 is just a different class.
Ken Driscoll, B&M, he just come on here and says figuring out the area of the lake that has the biggest fish pertaining to that time of the year, measuring, weighing, or recording weights from different parts of the lake is key. I would listen to that piece of advice too. That guy knows what he's doing.
That's right.
Let me go back.
I always say all the lakes you fish, there's always, if you fish all day, you'll catch like 1 or 2 of those big fish just on accident. You know, even when you're guiding, you'll be catching all these good fish, and then all of a sudden you'll catch a slammer. In my mind, you need 7 of those on a tournament. So if you're catching a lot of just good fish, and then all of a sudden you'll catch that big mama, in your mind, you're like, okay, I got to do this 7 times on the tournament if I want to compete with these guys. So that's pretty much what kind of gets stuck in my head. What's a big fish at this lake? And when you catch that big fish, you got to picture, I got to do that 7 times. So I either got to cover a lot more water, do it super fast, or find the right spot where there's a lot of those in there. And some guys are very good at finding a spot where there's just big ones everywhere. I would say I'd go out on a string and say 75 to 80% of the guys that are winning tournaments or finishing top 10, top 20 are catching half the fish that the bottom stringer people are catching, just due to they're in different spots with bigger fish, and there's not near as good a congregation, but they're catching the right fish when a lot of people are stuck on those, like I'm telling you, the just average run-of-the-mill fish. And they'll catch a lot of them and think that that's good, but you're wanting those big fish.
All right, here's a good one. When pre-fishing for a tournament, how do y'all see what color combo they like? Have you ever cut off the scroll back yet? Ever cut off the hook off the jig so you can try different colors to see which one they'll bite better? I like that one too.
That's genius. I've never cut the hook off because I can't look at a big crappie on that screen and not whack him. I'm going to say I'm really guilty of that, but if I do find a good spot, I'll catch one or two and say, all right, we got to go, and I'll look on the scope, because I try to tell myself that if they're there, I can get them to eat. I've learned that that's also don't have that mindset either. I've learned that the hard way. But the color combination, that's a good question. I would say if I'm going to be able to use minnows in the tournament, I'm going to try those first off, because you have to try to, I'm trying to compare to everybody else, but as far as trying to figure out the color combination, that's a good question. That's a really good question.
Maybe it's a hint.
I'd go from history. I'd go from the history of what I've looked at, dark water, darker baits. But heck, if you're in the tournament, you ain't going to have a set color. I've never started a tournament with a color jig and ended with the same color jig. We'll be switching through them things by the dozens by the time that tournament's over. So honestly, I think we figure out most of that while the tournament's going on.
Well, things change too.
Oh, absolutely. Every day's different. They might want a whole different. You might think you got something figured out. You show up, there ain't even a shad in the spot you think you got crappie. So that's just kind of tough. I never try to get a set game plan until it's go time. I try to get a good idea, but you never get something set in stone.
John Mayo says Sunday all the fish were sunbathing once the sun come up. 12 to 14 foot of water, but they're only a foot or two deep. I've seen that as well on Lake Washington's. The real goes back. A lot of these guys that are on here right now are going to testify, but I've seen one where it's been in the teens, low 20s, and those fish should get 3 to 4 foot deep, even 2 to 3 foot deep when it's extremely cold to come up and get some.
I've seen them doing that on grenada fish too. They'll do a lot of that sunning. You can catch some grenada fish sometimes so shallow that I'm telling you, I've seen the back of them on the dang, when the waves are coming over and it's blowing hard enough. They are so shallow that you will see your pegged weight out of the water when you get them to bite. They will sit a few inches deep in 10 foot, 6, 8 foot of water. It is super shallow bite sometimes, even when it was cold. Different breed, different caliber style of fishing all the way around.
Frank wants to know what tournaments you're going to fish this year, and if you'll please take it easy on him, he says.
Oh my gosh. Hi to Shaq.
Yeah.
Frank the Tank, I just seen him benching like 400 something pounds. Did you see that video he posted? Oh my gosh, man. He was now this was a while back though, before he got grayed over, started frosting over on us, but he had 400 something pounds he was benching out there. But no, I'm just fishing the elites, Frank. Maybe some state trail around here, maybe to tune up a little bit, but I'm just going to fish the elites. So I think it's 4 or 5 tournaments. That's all I'm going to fish, though. First one's in Louisiana, and it's February, first week of February. So I'll be seeing you there, hopefully. Are you fishing the elites? I bet he is. He fishes all of them.
Yeah, I think he fishes every one.
I'm telling you. There's one at Grand Lake, too, that I believe ACT's putting on. I haven't got all the specs on it yet, but if there's one at Grand Lake, I might just have to fish that one just to say I did. Get my butt whooped at my own lake.
It happens.
Oh, yeah.
I don't have that mindset that you've got.
What?
You know where they're at?
Yeah.
He said, yeah, he'll be there. Bet on it.
I figured he
Bet on it.
Uh-huh. Yeah, take it. Me and him's always running after each other up there. We're close all the time.
I think you need to arm wrestle him next time, maybe.
Oh, my gosh. Man. He might break it off. I have to do my left hand because I got to be able to swing them fish in the boat.
Thomas asked, wonder when some of these crappie tournaments will start weighing every legal fish like bass tournaments.
ACT's coming out with something. That's the specs I was talking about. They haven't came out. I don't think they've come out with a whole lot of details, but I think I read they're going to do like a spec. They're going to be a marshal in the boat. Correct me if I'm wrong, anybody, but there's going to be a marshal in the boat, and it's going to be either every legal fish or a pound fish, but they haven't made that official yet, I don't believe. But man, if you come to Grand Lake, I think it's in September they're wanting to come, you're talking over 100 pounds. I bet you it's over 100 pounds if it's every legal fish. Now, if it has to be a pound fish, a lot different. But if it's every legal fish that you have to weigh, like anything over 10 inches you're weighing, I promise you there might be a 200-pound stringer on that dang live feed. I ain't kidding you. It's unbelievable. So just depending on the
blow
weather.
Out your shoulder if you don't careful with that.
Do what?
You'll blow out your shoulder.
Yeah, I mean it too. 2 guys on top of a school. I mean, you might do some crazy numbers. But like I said, September, though, you're getting into summertime fish that might be a little finicky. I'm just going off of this last September. You could wreck over 100 fish a day of good fish. But every year's different, and it may not be that crazy. But it would be absolutely insane if it was that major league fishing style, if that's what he was talking about. It would be fun, though. I just don't know how they're going to get a marshal for every boat, and I don't know how in the world they're going to weigh all these fish. I mean, if you can't have then I don't know. We're going to have to get more details on that before I start saying too much about it. A lot of questions about that one. That'll be
That'll be fun.
Very fun tournament.
Well, I mean, physically, I can hold up to it, sounds like.
Yeah. Well, it'll give a lot of guys, I mean, nothing against these guys, but it'll give a lot of guys more of a chance. These guys are just dominating one pole.
You know, it would be interesting, though, the kind of on that same subject, and you guys live scoping so hard and heavy might be fooled on those tournaments, too, because I recall some of these really hot bites, especially pulling jigs that, you know, we would, and 100 fish a day really wasn't that big a deal.
See, that's crazy. I mean, that's where I feel like I'm saying, I think the field would open up big time with that type of tournament style because it takes away from all these, you know, not a 2-pounder, you're catching all of them, and it might make a big.
You go to a big school. I mean, I've had every pole in the back that have fish on them.
When you're long lining or trolling or you're spider rigging and you've got 8 rods compared to my 1 on a school,
it could be interesting there.
That could be a real interesting tournament setup. There ain't no chance you're gonna see me spider rigging or long lining, but I bet you would see some different winners.
You say that, and a couple of guys come in there and start whipping your tail over there. Brand,
I'll be calling Brad.
Yeah,
be like,
yeah.
Brad,
Be like,
hey,
oh,
how are you doing this? Brother?
Voicemail.
Yeah. You'll be heading down here to Grand to whoop me.
Let's see. Ken asked me if I ever tried pulling planer boards on super shallow fish on Washington. You know, I have, and it does work. And, you know,
You tried it all.
Man, it's a lot of work pulling planer boards, and Kent knows it. But definitely they work.
Can you see when they bite with those planer boards?
Yeah.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy.
Cover a lot of water really quick. And, you know, those shallow fish that are really boat spooky, that's a shallow lake overall anyway, and you get a lot of boat pressure on that lake. They'll really start shying away from boats. I mean, when I'm saying shy away, I mean 100 foot. You can't get near them.
Oh, wow.
Because they are super shallow and they are very pressured. So it could have been won several different times with somebody that would really want to go in there and pull some shallow planer boards. I've tried it. I have still got some planer boards in my shop right here, but I probably won't anymore. But it definitely it would work, and it still would.
I'm going to give a little shout out back to the boat, getting it all ready for the winterizing and all that. If y'all need anything to do with boat work, we're talking tires, trailer work, lights, anything, electronics, super good with all that stuff, is Integrated Boat Works in the Tulsa area. And you guys would probably know this fella. His name's Darren Thomas, I believe, but he's got his own thing going now. And he's rocking and rolling with it, stays super busy. But if y'all need anything to do with all that, if you're like me and not very tech savvy with all putting all that stuff in and
We'll tune you up before next year. How about that?
yeah, hooking all that stuff up together, you get that guy, give that guy a call. He's got a Facebook too, Integrated Boat Works. That's a good one to call. Guy I would trust with my stuff.
I'm trying to read a couple of questions here, so bear with me.
Yeah, all right. If I could see him, I'd read him. But next time I'll have something I can look.
Yeah, we're gonna get you on here.
I'll be rocking and rolling next time.
Yeah.
No, I say that. I'll be right here.
I guess the last question I think we've been over here well over an hour now, but asking about the live scope beam, hitting them and stalking on them. Do you guys move the transducer on and off of them? He says it kind of feels like some of the larger fish shy away from the live scope beam.
I've noticed a lot of people are doing that more. I'm starting to pay attention and see people that are fluctuating. A lot of spider riggers are doing that too, but I've not noticed much of a difference. That's just I think that's something above my pay grade, but I'm going to say that I've not noticed a difference, and I'm not going to pull it off of them, but a lot of people do. So it just depends on what you have confidence in. But I've not noticed if they're going to run. I really feel like it doesn't matter what you're going to do. That boat slap, your transducer, whatever it is, those fish got a sixth sense about them. They're gonna leave half the time. If they're spooky, it doesn't matter in my opinion. But Brad might have something on that too.
I think it goes back, to that pressured body of water. If you're on a heavily pressured waterway, I think those fish can feel it. And as far as cutting it off and trying to chase them down, it would be pretty much impossible at that point. But I do think these bigger fish that are highly pressured sense a live scope beam, my personal opinion.
Yeah. I've also noticed people are saying now that a lot of the fish are facing the boat every time you come up to them, saying that that's because they feel it and they kind of turn around and face it. I mean, I've not noticed I'm chasing a lot of schools half the time, so it's hard to pay attention much to that. But when I'm chasing singles, even a lot of times in Grenada, I'd say 80% of the fish I'm catching are swimming away. So I have a hard time I don't even notice if they're looking at me or not, because 90% of the time, by the time you get in range to know if that's the right fish you're going after, they're already slowly leaving or circling your boat, vice versa. So I don't know about the beam. To me, that's just opinionated.
Oh yeah.
I think there's so much going on that if they're going to feel that live scope transducer, they're going to hear the boat slap. They're going to feel your back trolling motors, your power poles going in the water, all this stuff that we've got going on now. That may not make a huge difference. I learned something about the trolling motors, that even the brushless. So I've got the Garmin Force.
Yeah.
When I go noodling, I'll spot lock my boat probably 50 yards or so away from the hole, and I'll spot lock it, hop in the water. And when I go underwater to grab these fish or to noodle, I will hear that trolling motor whistling so loud, holding my boat in place. I mean, it is crazy, just super loud in the water, that I'm thinking I'm 50 yards from the boat and I'm hearing it that loud. So I'd say they'd hear the trolling motor a lot further forward than they will feel the live scope. So that's a hard one for me. I feel like if they're going to stay there, they will. If they're not, they're not. It's a lot of stuff you can't help on that. But again, it's opinionated. But that trolling motor it blew my mind. Sometime when y'all are in the summer and swimming or it's warm and you're out there with your boat, listen to that trolling motor run underwater. It'll make you second guess how the heck we even get up to those fish, because it's loud. It's pretty loud. And now I might have all kinds of string in my bearings and all that, though. That might make it louder. But it was a cool thing that I kind of learned. Thought, wow, that thing. If I'm hearing it that loud, these fish are under here all day long. They know what a trolling motor sounds like coming up. So I think it just depends on the mood of the fish.
Well, guys, I definitely appreciate everybody getting on here tonight. I love it. I love what we're doing here. I love helping the people out and just visiting with everybody. I mean, a lot of good buddies of mine on here. I seen Dustin comment he wants to see on the tournament game again. I guess he could put a whooping on me. But, this is what crappie fishing is about to me, is sitting here and hanging out with my bud and talking crappie fishing. and we've got a lot more to come every Tuesday night, 7 o'clock. Going to run some cool contests as well. And, you know, if you got some ideas on things you want us to cover and talk about, shoot them up here. And, you know, we'll be glad to discuss them. And we're going to even try to get some more guests on here with us as well down through the line. But appreciate you guys watching tonight. Look out tomorrow. Kevin Rogers' podcast is coming on YouTube. It's going to be a good one. You know, Kevin's a great guy. He's fished tournaments, you know, a long, long time. And subscribe to it. Subscribe to us if you haven't already, and keep the comments coming. And I just seen it come on the screen. Bobby said it right there. But Merry Christmas to everybody. Enjoy your holidays.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
Yep.
We'd be here till midnight if you let me loose.
I know we got to get Dustin off here, but you know, it's a great time. But we definitely appreciate all you guys, and Merry Christmas from Brad. And look forward to the next one next Tuesday night, 7 o'clock.
Thank you, guys.